Yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We found this really helpful and successful the first time we did it, so we thought it would be a good idea to have another one, and we may continue to have these. Anyway, I want to welcome you on behalf of the Roundtable, and our hosts are myself and my co-chair, Jennifer DeBella, and our managing director, Kim Olson, and Kinsey Keck, the Roundtable coordinator. Just to let you all know, we are being recorded, so just to put that out there. And then just a couple of things about Zoom. Kim is sending out these polls. If you haven't received them, if you could fill them out, they're helpful to collect information to share with all of you, and they're anonymous.
Shobha, just to interrupt you for a moment, our poll was accidentally closed, so if you can just resubmit, that would be great. Access to the poll might just depend on whether you're using a phone or a laptop platform. So my apologies if you're not able to access it. It appears that most attendees are, so that survey size should at least give us enough of an indicator to be able to inform our conversation. So understanding.
Great, thank you. And again, it's being recorded. We're going to be sharing this more broadly with the field. So if there's something you don't want to share with the field at large, don't. If you could mute yourself unless you're speaking. If you want to ask a question or share a resource, you can use the chat function that I think so many people started using already. It's, I think, appearing on the right-hand side. If you have a question or want to say something, we will indicate when people should come off of mute and respond, just because there's so many people on this right now. We encourage you to use gallery view rather than a speaker view, so you can see a few people. And then also just to remind you that if you need to, you can stop your video and still listen to us, or stop your mic and still see what's going on. During the conversation, Kim is going to sort of monitor the chat. I'm going to keep time. Jen DeBella is going to be our moderator and sort of set up each section. And Kinsey's going to be taking notes that we're going to be sharing. We divided the agenda up into 4 sections because I know there's so much we could talk about. But basically, the sections are sort of the work we do with the DOE, remote learning, supporting teaching artists, and supporting admin staff, okay? I am gonna keep us on time, so if I come to a awkward, we need to end here, just apologies in advance, but I just wanna make sure that we get to at least touch upon each of these. So with that said, I'm gonna toss it over to Jen.
Thanks, Shobha. Again, hi, everybody. I'm Jen DeBella. I am the co-chair of the Roundtable with Shobha, and I'm also the Director of Education at Roundabout Theater Company. And so wearing sort of both hats today when trying to share a little bit about what we're doing at Roundabout, but also really wanting to hear from our colleagues, from all of you, about what's happening. And this is meant to be a conversation. We know that's hard with lots of people, so we're trying to use the chat function as much as possible, but I really want to give some prompts and hear back feedback so we can really share resources together. So as Shobha said, we have these 4 sections, starting with our connection and work with the New York City Department of Education. So we're starting there. Obviously, I think one of the biggest things that we've heard from our members so far that we're concerned about is invoicing and payments with the DOE. And so I'm going to outline what we understand are sort of 4 scenarios around invoicing at this moment. We know that there are outstanding invoices or POs, that is to say you have completed work and the work has been completed and you need to now certify those invoices and get paid. We understand from our colleagues at the DOE that that work is absolutely going to be paid and you should submit as soon as possible. Get those invoices certified, get your rosters if you don't already have them, and submit ASAP. There is staff at the DOE that is processing that during this dark period. So please do that ASAP. The second area of work we understand is work that you had outstanding POs for that you're attempting remotely. And what we understand is that we can be paid, organizations can be paid for that work if you're able to complete it remotely and show the documentation. So again, you should attempt that work and bill as you would normally bill, and that will be paid. The third area of the work that we understand folks are thinking about is work that is not able to be rescheduled. At this moment, the DOE hasn't been clear about whether or not that work can be paid. In fact, they're saying it won't be paid if you can't be rescheduled. So if you have an outstanding PO and that work is not able to be rescheduled or offered remotely, that they won't pay for that, you should know that we are going to continue to advocate to the DOE on behalf of the membership to try to get that work paid, because we understand that it's very possible that there's plenty of work that won't be able to be offered remotely or rescheduled. So we're going to keep pushing hard, although at the current moment they're saying that they won't pay for that. And then the last area of sort of billing that we want to hear about is new work in remote settings, right? So do you have additional work that you're now creating or able to offer that you want to then invoice? And that is sort of an area, I think, in some ways of unknown or uncharted territory. So interested to hear if anybody has had any experience yet around new work being offered in the remote settings.
Jen, could you clarify what you mean by offered remotely? Is that only referred to live video or pre-recorded video?
That's a great question. I understand that most of what teachers are offering is pre-recorded lesson plans and activities and things that people have to respond to. But I do also understand that there is some live kind of instruction happening. I think it's every school, every teacher is handling it differently. So I think it's a combination. It's anything that's being offered outside of your normal scheduled program is what I'm referring to as remote. So I see a lot of content coming in. Kim, do you want to kind of summarize what you're seeing?
Sure. I'm seeing a few questions come in, some of which I think will be able to relate to the DOE following this call. To clarify, at this point in time, yes, let's see. One person asked, can we send invoices without our attendance sheets? To clarify, the DOE is still requesting rosters with invoices at this time. Sarah M. asks, should we still send DOE invoices to 65 Court Street? Is there someone there? I have a feeling that's a DOE question. Jen?
Yeah, so we're gonna, this is actually really helpful. If we don't have all the answers to this, so we're gonna keep them all and send them immediately to our contact at the DOE who's been letting us know, because I don't want to misinform anybody, but this is important and helpful. Unless anybody has direct answers.
Another question asked, what type of documentation does the DOE want to prove that remote online learning was performed?
That's a really good question, and we're wondering that ourselves, so we will pass that along.
Great. Another question, we want to make sure it still falls within what's allowed on our MTAC. Again, we'll forward that to the DOE. Great. Somebody else has responded to send invoices to accounts payable at nyc.gov. We'll confirm that on our end as well, but thank you so much for sharing that. Let's see. We sent our invoices via email to our school purchasing officer and asked them to email it to their liaison at the DOE. They all went through ASAP, is what another participant contributed. Great, and people are also echoing the accounts payable email address, which is currently in the chat box. Again, we'll also confirm that on our end. See, someone's asked who is the contact at the Office of Arts and Special Projects for Partnerships. Audrey Cox was recently named the Director of Arts Partnerships at the Office of Arts and Special Projects, and her email address should be on InfoHub.
And we have been communicating with her directly too.
Another question, is the DOE still requiring paper invoices along with printed rosters? Given the circumstances, it would be important to be able to submit all of this electronically. I imagine it would also make things easier on their end too.
I think that's what we're talking about in terms of it sounds like the accounts payables email is accepting, which is great, and we will confirm that. So this question that came up last about canceled work that we want to submit for payment. Right now, we have been told that you cannot submit for canceled work, but we're going to keep pushing on that and see if we can get them to ease up on that a bit, if not completely.
I think that's why it's important, if you haven't already, to help us complete the poll. We're going to also use this aggregate data to be able to advocate as well. See, another question that came in, if schools do not reopen, would we be able to bill for what we had already done and be paid for that portion of it before schools had closed?
So I think that is about splitting invoices. I think if that's what I'm understanding the question. So I think if you can split the invoice so that it's half of what has already been paid, you should submit now, and then you can potentially, be able to get some of the income that was promised through the PO.
Another question that just came in is discussion about rolling over FY20 contract. Oh, is there discussion about rolling over FY20 contracts to FY21?
I haven't heard that yet, but I think it's part of what we can advocate for, if that's helpful.
See, does anyone know if the Office of Arts and Special Projects will honor arts partnership grants in full, or is it like a PO and we can only invoice against it for the work completed?
So I understand that certain projects, if they're funded outside of the DOE system, like we have the DOE facilitates the Arthur Miller Foundation project, that we've been told by the Miller Foundation that we would be paid for that work, and I would be honored. I haven't yet heard about the arts partnerships grants, but I wonder if anybody has. So I'm glad that Kathleen asked that question. Let us know if you've heard anything about OASP partnerships grants, and also the CASA programs.
Great. To an earlier point, somebody has reported that they had one school say that they would roll over to FY21.
That's great.
Similar question. See, any information about CASA grants or CASA programs? Not at this time, to my knowledge. Jen, have you heard anything otherwise?
I haven't heard directly about CASA, but Eve just wrote a comment about DCLA.
Great. Eve said the DCLA has said it would still pay for services that couldn't be fulfilled. Since CASA is through DCLA, I believe this falls into that.
But yeah, I haven't confirmed that specifically though. So
okay, so we can reach out to our contacts at DCLA too and ask specifically about CASA. That's been on our list already and asking that, so they've heard the question before, but we'll push a little harder to get an answer on it.
The same, I believe, then with SUCASA as well.
I would be the same, correct.
Let's see, another question that came in. We submitted invoices for work that was to be done, then the schools closed. So our invoice has dates on it where programming did not happen. Does the DOE have the capacity to review the invoices and approve partial payment? To Paula, that's something that we'll collect in our as a question for them and be able to forward it along.
Thank you.
Great.
Let's take a few more questions around the POs, Kim, and then we'll move on.
Sure. Someone asked, we got paid in full today for a project that wasn't completed. What should we do?
I think if the school certified it, then you got the money and you should negotiate with them about rolling it over. If the school certified it, then they certified that the work was completed.
let's see, I see some information coming in about sharing lessons, live video lessons and activities. We're going to hold that for a little later in the conversation, but we'll definitely be talking about that. I see another comment. I strongly support advocacy for payment in full on DOE POs that were issued where work was contracted and scheduled.
We are going to push very hard on that.
Another question, any information regarding specific funding grants like the Language Access Fund?
That's through DCLA too, Sarah, I believe. And so we can try to get more information from our colleagues there as well and get back to you around those specific grants.
Other questions are now coming in. Another question, interested to know if DYCD is making the same commitment to honor contracts.
We have not yet reached out to DYCD, but we should, if we can get a contact email from somebody on the best person to talk to at DYCD, we're happy to advocate on behalf of the field, as that's a separate city agency. Certainly we can loop in DCLA, and we will loop in cultural affairs on all of our DOE questions because they've helped us in the past advocate for the DOE. And so we can also loop in questions around DYCD, and they can hopefully help us as well. Although Rachel just said that DYCD will pay for remote work. So it sounds like all the agencies are sort of talking in the same way, except for DCLA, which is saying that they're going to be honoring some of the unworked or unable to be rescheduled. So we'll find out more and get back to you.
Christine noted, let's see, for NISCA grant recipients, there will be flexibility. Exact details to come, but here's the official word for now. And this is Christine Leahy from NISCA. This is an unprecedented time for all of us as the COVID-19 situation evolves on a daily basis, and we understand the significant challenges you are facing. We have been exploring a range of strategies, initiatives for supporting and sustaining our grantees and New York's unparalleled arts ecology. We will continue to be in touch with you as soon as we have details to share. So thank you, Christine, for posting that. And also just to note, the reason why we're reading a lot of these questions and comments is just as a point of access. We recognize a lot of people are on the phone or might have a visual impairment and be unable to read this. So that's why we're going through in this way. As all of our DYCD subcontractors and CBOs are telling us that they have no kids and no program. I am told that DYCD is closely scrutinizing only paying for actual dates. This message is from a CBO to our organization. I think if we're able to get a DYCD email to be able to contact on our end, we'll be able to share sort of information and then advocate on behalf of the field. It looks like one did just come in from Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing.
Excellent. So we'll continue then to start advocating on that as well. And we may ask offline for folks to share a little bit more specific around that, but that this is helpful to know that we're getting that message from DYCD as well, DYCD. Okay.
On the topic of DYCD, someone else posted, we are doing remote work with DYCD as a subcontractor via Zoom, and the city sent a memo saying all city contracts would be honored, including DYCD.
Great. We'll confirm that. Okay. I'm going to move us on to if folks have at all thought about new work that might be offered in this remote setting. Have you thought about that at all? I'd love to hear any comments, feedback, or question around that. So the question came in around offering free content. I'm actually thinking about, in particular, paid content. So if you're thinking about how you might be able to continue to offer services to the schools and bill for that work in new projects. Just reminding yourself on mute
if everybody else can just make sure that you are on mute, that would be great. So Heather, please feel free to come off mute and ask your question.
So it's not really a question, but I was going to say that one way we're trying to reach out to our teachers is to put a presentation on a Prezi, and then make it user-friendly for the students and the teachers to click on lesson ideas from the teaching artist and units from the teaching artist as well. Because what we're finding is that the teachers are really overwhelmed with this new platform, and we work with kids from grades 1 to 12. And parents are, not happy with having kids sit in front of a computer screen for 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever. So we're like really simplifying what we're doing in order to make it user-friendly for families and teachers.
Excellent. Thanks, Heather. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that in the next section too. So I'm really excited to hear what folks are trying to do in terms of remote instruction. That's really awesome, wonderful. What I'm thinking about in particular, just to clarify for this section is, if folks are thinking about billing for any new work that hadn't already been, they didn't already have a PO for. And somebody asked a question around new work for teaching artists. New work for orgs, essentially wanting to see what people are doing in terms of new projects that they would be invoicing for. Has anybody started to think about that?
I'm seeing Jessica Lorenz noted, I'm leading some PD services to staff via Zoom and Vimeo. Toya from Vibe said, we have plans to offer Zoom webinar style performances of new work that is being devised remotely. Let's see, I see other great information coming about DYCD and MTAX. We're gonna aggregate that all. Of course, this will all be released afterwards, but it helps us then with questions. So while we've moved on from that topic, thank you for putting those comments here. Let's see, I've also seen from Yo Rei, we are sharing classes with school communities via Zoom. PDs seem to be the most requested at this point in New Jersey. Let's see, to answer Amanda, I believe the platform Heather mentioned was Prezi, which is Prezi, I believe. Somebody though, please correct me in the chat box.
So since we're starting to move into some of this remote, let's move into that next section. So we're gonna end DOE invoicing. Again, we're gonna aggregate any questions, specifics. Thank you for all of your contacts around DYCD. We'll continue to try to support the field as much as possible in advocating on invoicing. And there's so much great content being generated around remote learning, so I want to jump into that. Just starting briefly with platforms. We know that folks are researching the best way to offer these different remote learning opportunities. And we believe that the NYC DOE is using Google Classroom, but we also know that some teachers are using Zoom. Each student has their own DOE email address. And we're curious to hear what platforms folks are using. We've been looking at Roundabout, we've been looking at Google Classroom to align with the DOE, but also Flipgrid, Zoom, for some of our programming that we offer outside of the DOE, not with just, but with students from the DOE. Kim, do you want to give an update on what the poll said?
Sure. I'm going to be keeping the poll open than rather share results, just because we have people coming in and out and I want everybody to have a chance to be able to answer, that's able to access the poll. But currently, Zoom is the most popular choice with 97 out of 125 responses noting that, so 78% of those that responded. And Google Classroom closely follows behind with 53% of respondents noting that this is the remote online learning platform they're exploring. Behind everything else, for the most part, has between 3 to 7%. With the exception of YouTube Live, which 14% of respondents are exploring currently.
Great. And as you were looking at that poll, we started getting some additional platform suggestions. We heard already, thanks to Heather, about Prezi, which is a great online presentation platform that's very interactive. So thanks again for sharing that. Kim, do you want to share some of the other ones that are coming in here?
Great. So At Photoville, we are working on commissioning artists and teaching artists to develop artist talks and online workshops to build out our existing visual storytelling lesson plans. Perfect. We're going to keep aggregating those and discuss, I believe, lesson content a little bit later.
Yeah.
Currently, we're just talking about platforms. Let's see. At Bronx Art Ensemble, we are in the midst of training our TAs to use the Google Classroom platform and supplying them with support materials, videos, and art-based games. Jen, a question has come in about what type of protection is there in place to protect schools from reusing pre-recorded materials to other students later?
That's a great question. We're going to talk a little bit about student safety later, but in terms of your actual content, I guess the tricky part is even if you have a password, people could be sharing that password again. I know that there's some platforms that you're able to offer the content that's pre-recorded for a certain amount of time, or a link is only offered, you can only click the link once. So there are some platforms that you're able to do that, and I'm curious to know if people know or have gotten that far on looking at settings in any of these platforms too.
While people respond, just to add other platforms that aren't in the poll. Eve noted they're looking at GoReact. Let's see, a question has also come in. Has anybody successfully used Google Platform with school clients? Can you connect the classroom directly?
Love to hear about that too. There's
Facebook,
some answer below.
yeah, Facebook Live is another. Let's see, I'm gonna skip down. Send a link via email to parents, I believe is the response to how to connect to Google Classrooms. Although please clarify if that was not the intended response for that question. Vimeo is another platform people are using, and then share direct password protected videos. YouTube private.
Google Meet was also mentioned further up, which is an extension of the Google platform.
Heather has noted, we have used Classroom successfully, but we needed the school to create email addresses for us and our TA so that it could be linked to our students' main Google Classroom page.
That's really great information. Thank you, Heather. There was a question around teaching artists using their phones. And I think absolutely you can use your phone to record content. You can use your phone to access most of these online, if not all of these online platforms. In fact, I think some of our students are definitely using phones and not computers. So I think, yes. In terms of editing, that's another story. Editing is, you can edit on your phone, but there's a little less functionality. It's a little hard. It's not as user-friendly as just recording.
Another question that's come in, has anyone successfully gotten lessons to students who don't have access to Wi-Fi?
I know the DOE had been working all last week on access points, free Wi-Fi, equipment, and I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but I know there was a major push to try to get as many folks who didn't have access points as possible. I'm also curious to hear if folks are still struggling with that.
We have seen a few questions come in on rights issues. Mm-hmm. Jerome noted, any thoughts on rights issues using commercial tracks or images?
I think if they're public, then you should be able to use them. I haven't heard anything about that yet. Again, Heather talked about specifically Spectrum, which we know is offering free Wi-Fi for students, and I believe a few other providers as well. I agree with that. I've heard that.
I believe
Can I just clarify one thing?
Yes.
Sure.
Hi, it's Jerome, and I asked the rights question. Just, you know, using commercial music and having it broadcast is I think we're okay, but in our organization's past, it's not always been okay. Once you get into the digital world, things are different than in your classroom. But are we all considering that this is the classroom now? That's my question.
That's what I would consider. So if you would use it in your classroom, then if it's public information, public music that you're sharing, I think as long as you're not using it for commercial purposes, right? You're not selling a ticket to it. But again, I think that's definitely not a clean answer. Okay, I'm gonna move us to, sorry, Kim, is there anything else on platforms before we move on? I wanna make sure that I'm not missing anything. There's really great information shared here.
There's also great questions that we'll be able to pass on to the DOE. Thank you for sharing Wi-Fi channels that can be passed along. And in regards to music rights, perhaps communicate with ASCAP or BMI.
Sure. If you have specific questions around rights, that makes sense.
And then
Real
just
quick,
one last platform, Slack.
Oh no, I just want to say best practice is always to put that it's for educational purposes, whatever you're posting. And also anything that is used for educational purposes for less than 15 students or is not a complete work is covered. So you're good there.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt. We're also seeing
Kim, there's a good question that came up. If the tablets the DOE provided allow them to access the internet in general or only access the DOE online learning platform? I thought that was a good question. And then just one thing that Heather pointed out, Spectrum, families can call, and she listed the number and asked for the 2-month online learning package for New York City students.
Great. And we'll have, of course, that phone number in the chat box as we upload it to our website. But does anyone have an answer to Elizabeth's question regarding DOE tablets and internet access?
I don't have a answer on that, but if anybody else does, please feel free to share. I'm assuming it's broad-based internet access, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Also saw mention of Slack, which is another great kind of online chat resource, lots of online collaboration capability with that. And there was some additional warning around content in uploading content to Vimeo around rights. So keep an eye on that as well.
Great. And we just did get confirmation that from Catherine at the DOE that the tablets given to students have access to the internet.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Jen, I think we should move on, to the next subsection.
Thank you. So the next subsection is, how are you communicating with classroom teachers around all of this? Do you have staff reaching out to partner teachers? Are you getting positive results from folks? And when you're reaching out, we understand that, this remote learning has just begun, but we're really curious to hear from the field. If you have been reaching out, what has the teacher response been so far? And how have you found communication with classroom teachers this week?
Great. One person wrote, we've emailed a few times over the past 2 weeks with no response. Our education director has connected with all partner principals, and then our teaching artists are working directly with classroom teachers to send them materials they can upload. We haven't heard from every principal yet. Another response, I'm working closely with a classroom teacher and we have ongoing contact. Another response, teachers have been contacting us with requests for materials. Great. From Catherine, please note there may be restrictions on what students can download to their devices, apps, etc. Great. We have been in another response. We have been in touch with our classroom teachers and are working to implement live online classes for their students. Another response, a few artists have been assigned school email addresses to access their Google Classroom account. Another response, it varies from school to school. Some are ready to continue remotely, others are overwhelmed.
It looks like we're getting, which is how we are feeling too at Roundabout, is that we're getting some great responses. We've obviously emailed most of our principals and asked them to continue the remote learning, but it's varying from teacher to teacher in terms of what they're hearing back.
Great. Yeah, a lot of these comments are echoing this. Another comment that came in, everyone seems pretty overloaded, so we are trying to gather our resources / plan before moving forward with meeting each school administration. We have received about 10% response rate for meetings thus far. Another person is, I've been surveying teachers with a Google form asking about interest and tech access, and it's been very positive.
Great, that's smart.
We are reaching out to our collaborating teachers and principals. Most are enthusiastic about getting the class online, but are overwhelmed by the transition. Teachers and students are getting familiar with whatever online platform they're using. Some are ready. Somebody posted earlier regarding strong IT support. Schools with strong IT support are open and ready to go. Some schools seem completely at sea. Someone typed, is anyone in New York City planning on resuming physical workshops in schools if schools can reopen? Or are you planning to complete remotely regardless?
Well, yesterday the mayor in his press conference alluded to the fact that schools may not be reopening this season. That's not an official word, but it's starting to look like, or at least they're thinking, the administration is thinking about continuing to keep them closed. I know from our perspective, we are hoping to launch our summer after school program or our summer out of school time program, because we feel like if indeed the schools continue to be closed, young people are going to want to come together and create some art in response to what's happening. But again, we don't know.
A question has come in, how about after school? Where are folks?
Yeah, there's a question we were going to think about in terms of students, but I know our after school program is starting to work remotely as of today. And I know that there were some folks that mentioned up earlier in the chat around non-school-based programming, but with young people, about already starting to create work with young people.
Another comment, we don't really have a sense of the D75 schools at this point as it relates to what the actual technology support for distance learning looks like. It appears some folks have been getting requests to defer work to the fall. One organization is prepping to launch our after-school programs, getting going later this week. Each partner is different. We are primarily in the after-school space. We are trying to move online. Paula noted earlier, I think most teachers would welcome any support and/or resources which we want to provide, but it is still unclear to me if the school/DOE will accept and honor this work and pay our same contractual rates.
So we just have a few more minutes in this section. Jen, if you want to just open it up to working, to engaging with the public.
Sure. Just a moment. I just want to see that there are some really cool things about student after school programming or student direct programming. So what are you offering directly to young people? And there's a real issue here that we haven't yet talked about around safety and student safety online using some of these platforms. Although before we get into safety, I just thought it would be worth mentioning some of the ones, Kim, that have come up around. I just saw one after school musical production happening online via Zoom. That's pretty amazing. Super cool. And hold on, Kim, you're probably following this better. If you want to respond to the questions that folks are seconding.
Let's see. That's just the seconding that teachers would welcome any support and/or resources.
Great.
But it's unclear just how the DOE will honor this work and pay the same contractual rates.
So it looks like some folks are moving after school programming to virtual, which is great. That gets into all kinds of the similar issues around content and how the content is living online and regulating audience views. Again, check into your settings on the different platforms, especially if you haven't yet picked a platform, to see what kind of restrictions you can offer in terms of expiration of links, clicks, views.
A great question came in. Are there statistics or data being prepared to provide a picture of how many students have access / are reachable, tech, internet, etc. for remote learning? I'm not sure, but that's a great question for us to be able to pose to our contacts at the DOE.
So it looks like we're moving into public programming, which is great, which is an area that we wanted to touch on a bit. We know that many organizations have done an incredible job responding really quickly and offering great public access programming for young people, for adults, for their core partners and constituents. Curious to hear how folks are thinking about more public free programming or public paid programming that's being offered not directly to New York City public school students.
This is what I'm seeing coming in so far. Google Hangouts panels with Q&As, similar to how this, see, the comment might have gotten cut off, but it just looks like hosting Q&As via Google Hangouts. Has anyone figured out how to host a virtual concert or a musical production? It looks like Kelly might have earlier on in the chat, Kelly Donovan, looking for software / websites that can help us piece together videos for spring presentations and performances. Another comment, we are moving our Saturday programming to online content and classes. Let's see. Curious specifically about any platforms that allow for singing / speaking in a scene where the sound is best for this and allows for some overlapping voices. Let's see, at Only Make Believe, it says we bring interactive theater to kids in hospitals and care facilities. We are creating activity guides and pre-recorded videos to send out like episodes a couple times a week. Each video will end with a call to action to have folks send us photos, drawings, creations, videos, and such. The videos are being self-taped by our actors at home and then edited by our staff. We will post these on social media and to our website, and we'll send directly to our facility contacts. Great, thank you for sharing. See, Debbie posted a link to NPR. It's for the Berklee College of Music, how they've responded. Symphony Space is offering archived content on a daily basis to our mailing list, but I think it's accessible to all, says Madeline. We found if using Zoom that connecting via phone audio has less of a delay than using computer audio can help with rehearsals. Samantha, we are restructuring our offerings. We're largely producing PSA posters. We're a poster museum about staying home and cautioning against a xenophobic action. Great.
Fantastic. Okay. I just want to note a few things that came in, and stepping back just for a minute. I just want to make sure that everybody's really careful and looking at student safety as you're doing any kind of one-to-one program. If you're not using an approved DOE channel and you're offering programming direct to teens, just be aware of the settings, make sure that there's no public settings so that people can't jump in and join something that might be an opportunity to connect with students. So just be really cautious the way you normally would with all of your programming when you're thinking about moving direct program with students online. And then also there was a question around D75 and how D75 schools are being supported. And Kim, I wonder if we can get just aggregate some of the content around G75 too for the notes as well.
Sure, definitely.
Okay, I think we need to move on to the next section. There's obviously some really fantastic, great content here that you'll have access to via the chat and via the notes. So stay tuned, and you can keep sharing too. So the next section we want to talk about is our teaching artists. On our last call, we had, of course, this was a big topic. We know that all of our admin teams are really concerned and working really hard to figure out the best way to support our teaching artists, as we feel like they are the, one of the most vulnerable populations of our arts education community. Wanting to start off with compensation. Kim, before we get into comments and questions, do you want to share the results from your question around from the poll?
Sure. The question was, if your organization is able to pay teaching artists, or is your organization able to pay teaching artists for lost or canceled work? 31% responded yes, 18% responded no, 28% responded we are able to pay partial compensation, and 23% responded unsure.
Okay, thank you. So wondering if anybody wants to share more. We know that that's sort of sensitive, but I will say that we committed to paying folks through the initial dark period of our company, which was going until mid-April. And now we're negotiating to try to continue programming and working on budgeting. So I'm sure folks are in the same place in terms of what they are able to offer over the next few weeks. But if anybody wants to share any additional information around teaching and artist compensation, how they've been able to leverage any existing resources, be creative, what are you doing around compensation with teaching artists?
I'd like to jump in.
Great, go ahead, Michael.
Hey, so lots of stuff. Collectively from maybe 15 different organizations, mainly people who are under 50-person staff, that can include teaching artists and staff, are paying existing budgets that were pre-aligned for those jobs. Depending on your organization, that changes obviously, but that's what I'm seeing as a pattern. And then the larger the organization is, the more contracts in place, the more things that are a factor where we're in a standstill. And that is completely understandable. And I think that's why I want to get my hand up. It's completely understandable from the admin standpoint. We have to all understand why everything is, we're all 100% right and we're 100% wrong, because the only thing that matters right now is like just moving forward and finding the quickest, fastest way. This is a beautiful opportunity to speak in front of and with you all. Thank you for giving me the floor for a minute, that we get to learn and teach right now. And people are already online. We were already selling things online. Teachers and organizations have already transitioned online. I'm going to do a roundtable post about this coming up right after the meeting. So any of the resources that get shared back will get resurged into that, because you can do it already. As an independent, when you're working with your organization, you really have to follow that line through, and you should not work off that contract. You should follow that through with your organization's way. And from what I see in my circle, from my perspective, 30% of my teaching artists are maintaining their pay for the next week or two. 70% of us haven't been paid in 2-3 weeks, some of us longer, because normal contracts with the DOE. I have some outstanding things from November and January and last April I'm still waiting for. So all of us have built through our savings that has slowly, this was happening anyway. We're always late on payroll this time of year anyway. It's normal practices. It's just an extra level of stress we have to wade through. So from a TA perspective, finances are in really weird places, especially if you have 4 or 5 jobs that you're on a 1099 about. So you really have to just go where you need help. If you need food, that's where you need to go. And you should stay home and look for aid in that way. I'm not paying rent. I'm not paying a phone bill. I'm not paying anything because I have no money. So I'm just letting that be the way it is.
Yeah.
But I think for me, what I'm trying to say to nearly 800 adults and other people I've spoken to in the last 48, 72 hours is just do you. Stay safe, take care of yourself, If you need something, you need to get it, but you don't, there's so many things we want to do right now, and we have to just have a moment of self-care. And I'm going to take a lesson from somebody who did this in a previous thing. If we could all just take a big breath for 1 second, one big breath collectively, and then I'll pass.
Thanks, Michael. We really appreciate it. And I think just to echo what Michael said, I think we know that our teaching artists are really struggling. And so we are doing the best we can to try to help advocate for our TAs. There's been a lot of great content coming in. Kim, do you want to respond to any of this or share any of this?
Sure. Just a reminder also, if you can put yourself on mute if you're not speaking, that'd be great. To echo some of the content that's come in, we are waiting for word from government funders, which are primary supporters of our fund. Another comment, we are prepared to pay all of our staff, full-time, part-time, including front desk, shop, cafe, etc., and our teaching artists through May 1st as of now. We are paying TAs to do remote work, such as writing blog posts, creating downloadable content we could put on our website, building up outreach list for the fall, etc. for research. We pay them their prep rate, and for creation writing their teaching rate. We are giving them a weekly cap of around what a moderately busy week looks like. Happy to elaborate if that's helpful. I'll also say the Roundtable is doing something similar. We have charged our Teaching Artist Affairs Committee to write blog posts that we will then be able to use the remainder of our TA Affairs budget to reimburse at an honorarium of $50 a blog post. And are trying to look at see other ways that we can be creative with our budget as well to be able to support the community. Another comment that came in, we are able to pay teaching artists anything taught or untaught classes through March 31st. We want to pay moving forward, however, we can't due to all of our on-site funding that has stopped and school funding stopping. This is Tada Youth Theater. We, CoLab, are paying our teaching artists for any promised work through the end of our fiscal year. This is one moment where having a business model of contributed revenue versus contracts is helping us manage the crisis. See another comment, we found these two lists with useful information about artists and freelancers. Thanks for sharing. We'll also push that out as well. Another comment, we are committed to paying our TAs through this Friday, March 27th, for any work that was scheduled to take place up to and including this Friday. Beyond that, we are uncertain due to lack of clarity from Department of Education, DCLA, etc. In terms of TAs/artists, there are some funds that are out there. What's the best way to collate these resources? We are currently working on that on the Roundtable side. I know that there's been the COVID resources for freelancers has been a great resource hub. We'll post in this as well. And it seems like new things are continuing to pop up every day, thankfully. So hopefully we'll be able to aggregate on our end, but also suggest looking towards the COVID freelancer website, as well as the Teaching Artist Guild website as well.
And we're gonna ask for some more resources later too in the call.
Yeah.
It looks like we're getting a lot of similar responses in terms of paying through March. And then a lot of uncertainty beyond that, although there are some folks that are paying to the end of fiscal year, which is great.
Let's see another one. We are paying compensation at 50% of their regular rate for missed classes. We'll be able to do this for 3 weeks, hoping by then we'll know if classes can continue virtually. After 3 weeks, we'll reevaluate our financial position to see if we can continue.
Yeah.
Another comment, New York City Children's Theater is committed to paying TAs for their missed work. We are also working on gaining remote learning opportunities. We are applying for the New York Community Trust Emergency Fund to cover all TA payroll for the rest of the year. Let's see, Kinsey, would you be able to post a link to that application? The New York Community Trust has put together a consortium of different foundations that small and mid-size arts and cultural institutions can apply for.
And we're actually starting to move into resources, Kim, and I saw that folks have been starting to post some emergency resources for teaching artists, which is great, including Christine from NIFA, who just also, sorry, Christine from NISCA, who just posted NIFA's link.
Great. Yes, please continue to pass along resources at this point. Somebody else has noted, once classes stopped, all the teaching artists where I work were laid off.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that because that is absolutely happening too. Okay, so let's move on. If anybody wants to continue, please continue to share resources around emergency funding. We're also at the roundtable working to try to get access to some emergency funding to offer to teaching artists, and not just teaching artists, but we also know that some education staff, admin staff have also experienced layoffs or potential for that. And so we're going to also continue to support resources or share resources around any emergency funding to individuals. And obviously the big grant for cultural organizations that you can apply to through New York Community Trust as well. Please also share any other professional resources you might have that you're offering teaching artists. For example, how are you training your teaching artists on these different online platforms? Have you offered any resources to them around training? Have you offered, if you're not able to pay your teaching artists, are you giving them support in accessing unemployment resources, or are these other funding, emergency funding resources? Just curious about how, if we can crowdsource any resources that we're sharing with teaching artists.
And I can speak. At People's Theater Project, we used the last couple of weeks to train our team on remote teaching, on using Zoom to teach classes, and are continuing to do training on Google Classroom. We are committed for them to keep their same teaching rate up until the end of the fiscal year. So those, we are hopeful that a lot of them, the programs that we run on their own, those have already started. For the ones that are with our schools, some have responded to us, some not. If the schools do not respond to us, we'll still continue to honor their pay. But instead they'll be working, using those hours as remote admin work, even though the salary stays at the teaching rate, to support our education director with uploading resources and materials and descriptions of activities, and just continue to fill that out. But we're hopeful and are hoping that the remote working can happen so that we can invoice the DOE.
Fantastic, thanks. Anything else, Kim, you want to share from the chat?
Yeah, I'm just seeing our TAs were laid off at TDF, but we are helping them to apply for unemployment. Rachel asked, would folks be willing to share their training resources? I feel like we are all creating the same thing, and perhaps that could be crowdsourced.
Absolutely. So please, if you're willing to share links, we will make sure that the community has them.
And then 92nd Street Y, any TA that was scheduled to teach can cash in any New York City paid sick leave time as any TA that was scheduled to teach can cash in any NYC paid sick leave time an individual has earned, or as earned, sorry.
As we're crowdsourcing any resources, I just want to also remind you all, I'm sure you're all doing this, but just to make sure that you're trying to be as transparent as possible with your teaching artists and staff in your updates. Regular check-ins are really helpful. I'm sure many folks are already doing this, but if you can do daily or weekly check-ins with your staff, with your TAs, whether you do that via Zoom and you just do like whole person check-ins to make sure that everybody's okay, whether you do emails, just being in regular communication and trying to be as transparent is really, I think, important if you're not already thinking about that. Okay, so please continue to share resources. Corey just shared a great Zoom cheat sheet that we can share. We can crowdsource these and give them to the whole community. That would be great. So we're not repeating work.
Seeing one thing that we've been doing that has been really helpful is every Monday afternoon hosting a virtual all-staff town hall with updates, FaceTime with all staff. It's been the highlight of the week every week.
We're doing the same with our teaching artists. Has been fantastic.
Jen, I liked what you said to me earlier, that the how are you doing doesn't always lead to very positive start to any call. Offering other questions like what brought you joy today, maybe bring a tchotchke, to share just as another way to bring some positivity into the work.
Some other great ideas here in the chat.
Yeah, are you paying TAs for their attendance at all staff meetings? We've been doing
that, and we encourage you to try to pay them for anything. And just like we heard from People's Theater, you know, any chance that you can offer reassigned work, pay folks for things like meetings is a great opportunity to compensate teaching artists for their time. So yes, we're paying TAs when we do those check-ins as well.
We've also been doing fun things like every Thursday lunch is all staff trivia. Alex said we created a Facebook group to support our community of artists that they could add onto and share helpful insights at this time from New York City Children's Theater. We'll also note the Roundtable has a Teaching Artists of New York City Facebook page that at this point has around 2,200 followers. That's a great place to direct your teaching artists, just as we're doing here in crowdsourcing among largely arts educators and arts administrators. That's another place that they can connect with their community. Zooming with your pet is a fun one too, says Heather.
So I'm just gonna give you guys a time check just to keep us moving.
These are all great, and a lot of these can be used to support not just teaching artists, but your whole staff and community. And so I'm wondering also if folks can share anything that they're doing in particular for their staff, for admin staff. I think all of these are great: lunch breaks, full staff check-ins. One of the things that I'm thinking about personally very specifically is how to honor work hours, how to preserve staff capacity. This idea of working in the same place you're living is hard, and sometimes those hours can get blended in. So I'm really trying to honor that with our team. Wondering if any other folks have ideas around how they're trying to kind of preserve the work-life balance in this, the pace feeling so rapid.
Hi, I just wanted to say that my husband's had to go online for work as well. And one of the things that he said to his staff, starting to work remotely, which was I think quite a good idea I'd like to share, was that obviously working from home, he advised all his people to work less, like up to 4 hours a day, because when you're not actually in a physical place where people are walking by and you're going to meetings or going out to lunch, and you don't realize how much work you actually get done in that 4 hours of concentrated time. And also so that people didn't feel alone, to have somebody that they absolutely trust to check in with if they're not feeling well. So because it might not necessarily want to check in with their manager or feel comfortable with another member of staff, but to have somebody that they really trust outside of their own working environment, or somebody that they can absolutely check in with, is really, he advised, was really important. So.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Elaine.
Great, something else that came in, posting images of home offices and hilarious moments. It's been really fun. Another comment, we do weekly education department video calls, weekly all staff video calls, and daily calls with my staff. We talk work, feelings, movies, food, etc. It's from Tada.
I just heard from somebody privately that to set an alarm for yourself to take a lunch break, and at the end of the day, that's a great idea. I might do that. Although my 5-year-old is usually my alarm that the day is over.
NJ Pack has been using Slack, and my team has been using Netflix Party to watch a movie during non-work hours. Schedule coffee. Our operations director invited me to have coffee this morning, 10 to 10:45. We drank our coffee, caught up about some work stuff, and just life check-in. Another comment, having moment of being on versus being off is helpful. We use Tick to track our time, and for me personally, having that turn off and on is helpful. Becky, if you can share that resource in the chat box, that'd be great.
There's also a functionality if you used Microsoft Teams, where you can sort of say you're available or unavailable, and you can make yourself unavailable at the end of the night if you'd like. So there are a lot of these different collaboration tools have that functionality. And if you can institute something across your department, which I don't think that I've done a great job of yet, but you can certainly try to set some standards.
Great. Madeline also setting an alarm for 10-minute exercise session to earth, wind, and fire every 45 minutes.
Love it.
Thanks, Becky, for posting that link to tickspot.com. Amanda wrote, my boss has mandated outside time for me. So nice. She even suggested we put it in our Google Calendar. So I take that time every day. Have a dance party, says Shoba. Danielle, I use music playlists throughout the day.
That's great. Okay, excellent. Those are really great ideas. Please feel free to keep sharing. And I love what Austin just said, which is how will this change the way we work in the future? I think it's a really great question. And I think hopefully, right, that would be one of the great silver linings if we can really figure out how to institute some of these ideas, barriers, work-life balance suggestions.
Great. And it's actually Michael Wiggins.
Michael.
Austin set this up for him.
Thanks, Michael. Okay. We're going to move into Q&A. Do we have time, Shoba, to do some general Q&A? Great.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for letting us get through some of these topics. And sorry for having to cut us off and move us forward. But we would love to answer any direct questions now that we can, that we didn't answer so far or you didn't get resources from. There's already a few coming in.
Great. I can speak to our annual conference face-to-face. So we're actually very excited to announce on this call that while we are unable to have the in-person face-to-face conference, we are shifting to be hosting a digital face-to-face conference. We are planning to launch that on the date that the conference would have actually happened, so either April 15th or 16th. And then we will be hosting a face-to-face series. So each week from the middle of April through likely the middle of June, we'll be hosting one digital session. This will all be completely free. We are very grateful for our government funders and corporate sponsors to be able to continue to offer programming. So please stay tuned for a more extensive announcement coming within the next week or so. If you are one of the presenters of Face-to-Face, we will be in touch with you specifically with what that looks like for you. So please stay tuned for more information on that front, but we're so excited to be able to offer this digital conference offering and really can't wait to share more information with you soon. Let's see, so other questions. Morning yoga, anyone want to lead? I think just if you're interested, message in, try to coordinate something.
There's a question about registrations. If you have online classes or camps, are you seeing registrations? Particularly summer camps.
No one's thinking about summer right now. I just talked to Atlantic Theater Company. They have about 20% of their after-school programming in a digital space already. They're using Zoom. I'll post a whole bunch following in the Roundtable blog about other links for the digital transition, because essentially we're just being asked to learn Microsoft Word when it first came out, but it's the same thing we've always done, new format. So I'll offer all that at the end. If there's any more like tech questions, you can feel free to pass those through because that blog will be up within an hour after our meeting.
Thanks, Michael.
I'll also, in response to that question, I am seeing, yes, we are using video auditions at NJPAC for summer. Katie's noted, yes, we are having online reservations for summer camp. All of Atlantic is on Zoom, NYU full-time conservatory and evening conservatory as well. Although I am seeing also as a parent, I can say I held off on all my summer camp registration. And thanks, Rachel, for sharing the YoReMi, the free music and yoga app for free and by donation. Go ahead, Shoba.
No, I was going to say that, but I just saw another good question. Any tips on how to share one workspace with your spouses? Great question.
Very good question. Here's one answer. Sharing workspaces with partners. Try to schedule calls at different times. Be transparent about what you need. My partner and I live in a small 1-bedroom and call the bedroom the conference room for calls and the living space for the other work. That works. I saw a colleague of ours yesterday. She put an old a piece of a shelf she wasn't using on her 3-part laundry hamper sorter and was using that as a desk for herself so that her husband could have the other.
Noise canceling headphones as well. I see mentioned and echoed.
Great. Happy to source any other questions.
See, question, does anyone have any information or on programs that are serving the DOE rec centers that started this week?
That's a great question. The rec centers are, just to clarify, are locations for folks, for families of first responders, healthcare workers, retail workers, folks who have to go to work, have to report to work, are considered essential. That's places for students to be able to go during the day. So I'd be really helpful to hear what people are doing.
While those answers come in, also just to echo an answer that came in, which I find funny, sharing spaces with your partners, invent an imaginary office coworker that you can blame things on. See, with rec centers.
And shout out to all the parents that are navigating homeschooling and office working. I am with you on your apartment is now all of those things.
So regarding rec centers, I heard that some certified arts teachers are being asked to teach at rec centers because they weren't doing online teaching at their own schools. Another comment, I have been in correspondence with the rec director who said that only CBOs are being invited now.
Interesting.
They're looking for CBOs to support these centers, and they're located in every district. Another comment, no virtual learning planned at recs now. Rec centers are looking for volunteers. Haven't seen any paid roles posted. Great, I'm just gonna go up on the chat because I see some other questions have come in. A question that came up earlier, how are orgs collecting video submissions / art content from students? Is anyone requiring photo / video consent forms? Scrolling down.
If anybody has an answer on how they're doing consent forms, I think that's a great question.
Hi, this is Nell. I mean, we always do video and photo consent forms at the beginning of every program because of what we do. So, I mean, that's what we've done in addition to the DOE's release, but I realize that that's not going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
2 suggestions that have come in, doing a virtual doc sign, and then also fillable consent form PDFs. DocuSign.com. Great, please continue to post any resources regarding that question. I'm gonna, we use HelloSign. I'm gonna go back up and see other questions that have come in.
Some answers around the rec centers as you're looking at those questions. Students at rec centers have been told to bring digital device every day for remote learning. That's coming from Michael.
Another question, anyone have any thought or ideas on how to manage cash flow while we wait for income from DOE?
I believe that you need to look into this and we can try to get an answer on this, but the stimulus plan that was just announced today, I believe that nonprofits will be eligible for loans that could be forgivable if you're able to retain staff. So just take a look at that content, and if we can find a translated version As soon as I'm sure that we'll start to get to see some sort of truncated translated versions and we'll post that on our message board as soon as we have more information about what that looks like. So stay tuned. I think there is going to be some forgivable loans being offered to nonprofits. They're included in the SBA part of the stimulus package as a way to manage cash flow. But I'll also be happy to hear from other folks that are thinking through cash flow. I know you could potentially, again, if you're able to, depending on the size of the organization, you could get a cash, not a cash loan, but a line of credit at a bank. That's another way to think about cash flow for organizations.
I'm seeing also talk with your funders to see if they'll lend you interest-free money. And then also a question, do you know the link to the Fed package? If anybody has that, please post it in the chat. Let's see. Another question that came in, what platforms are you using to collect that work from students? And then Nell, I'm going to go to a question that I got for you.
Sorry, about the form, is that it?
Yes.
Oh, I'm happy to share our form. I can put that, I can upload a file, right, to this? Okay.
Yeah, here in the chat feature, there's a file button on the bottom right.
Yep, okay.
Thanks, now.
You're welcome.
Talk with funders. More long-term, but a great program at the Actors Fund is free. The first part of their curriculum is budgeting nuts and bolts, and the link is provided. Thank you, Flo.
Thanks, Flo.
Then Michael shared a blog post from Fractured Atlas with emergency resources for artists.
Please keep sharing resources. Those are really great. We'll keep aggregating what we have.
Nell, I know you're working on a file, but would you mind sharing how you got your cool backdrop?
Oh, not a bit. Hang on. Let me just come back.
Yeah.
If you go, I just learned how to do this today, and it's really fun. So if you look on the bottom of your Zoom screen, sorry, I got too much going on. You'll see in the left-hand corner where it says stop video. Everybody see down at the left-hand corner? I don't want to share my screen because it's such a mess. To the right of stop video, if you click on it, you can see the second option is choose virtual background. And then when you click on that, you're going to have to download something really fast, and then you can either choose a virtual background or you can upload a picture of your choice.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Pretty soon we're going to see everybody have different backgrounds on this call. Let's see. Another question, what I am noticing about many of these city grant/loan programs is that you need to show 2 months of decreased revenue. It is difficult to do that as DOE payments trickle in. Anyone have advice for this?
Yeah. I'm not sure about the city loans. I wonder if there's a time limit. Like, I wonder if you need to be careful about when you apply once the DOE contracts payments stop. But others might have other specifics. I saw Michael also said, yes, call your city council people. I've heard that too multiple times. Individual city council folks are helping advocate and get answers for things, so please call them.
And Michael offered, as you said, call your city council person, ask for the chief of staff. Eric Botcher is the chief of staff for Corey Johnson in Manhattan. Tracy Jackson at Deborah Glick's office.
Agreed. I've actually heard some really great stories about people getting great support from their individual council members.
And she is a New York Assembly person.
Also, I've heard if you or other folks, your teaching artists or staff or anybody's having trouble with unemployment, to also contact their city council person, that they're helping as well. Not just for organizations, but also for individuals.
Other questions that you may have, please feel free to put them in the chat box.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Hi there, this is Nella with St. Nick's Alliance. I was trying to type in a question in the chat, but I guess I don't know if you all saw it. I'm just curious to know what level of membership organizations have purchased for Zoom that gives them the capacity to have their TAs and other, part-time staff do lead sessions and do interactive online engagement sessions with our students.
That's a great question, Nella. Thank you. Kim, do you want to answer what you know and then other folks can add?
Sure. I'll be transparent in saying I'm very much a Zoom novice, but there is a function to be able to add hosts. So what I did, we're currently at the Roundtable subscribed for a Zoom Pro account. And in preparation for today's call, I just increased our membership from there being 1 host to there being 4, so that me, Kinsey, Jen, and Shoba were all able to have access to as hosts. And it's $14.99 per month for up to 100 participants. We at the Roundtable have also, Zoom allows you to really customize your package. So while we have 4 hosts currently, we also bumped up our meeting capacity to be 1,000 people, just given how our conversations have been trending. This call at one point had over 200 people on it. But for face-to-face, we anticipate potentially having a lot more. So just making sure that our capacity is at the right size as well, based on the audience we're serving.
Thank you.
And that link to the Zoom tutorial may have more information in it as well that was earlier on.
If you posted that link, just post it again too, just so it's also fresh, although we'll continue to share it. Jen, go ahead.
And I agree that some funders are offering discount or licenses for Zoom to their grantees. So keep your eyes out for that.
And Nell, thank you so much for sharing the general student release form for Magic Box. Phil also noted Zoom has free trainings daily. Some funders are providing free Zoom licenses to their grantees. Great, another question came in. For arts partnerships from special projects, if programs are more than midway through, we have submitted invoices for services rendered, but are wondering what they will do with the funds that have already been given to the schools and are in their budgets.
So that's around the Office of Arts and Special Projects individual grants that went to the schools, but they're earmarked for organizations. That's part, we already have that on the list, I believe, of questions to ask the DOE. We'll get that answer for you. Okay, we have just about 2 more minutes left. Any last minute resources, please add them. One more question.
Another one, for those with brick and mortar office spaces, have you reached out to your landlord about deferring rent payments since everyone is working remotely?
Yes, that is something you can absolutely do. I know that some organizations, some landlords are offering reduced rents already or deferring a payment. Some have offered like half rent because the building's not being used. I think absolutely appeal to landlords and management companies.
Yeah, the Roundtable has we were able to get 50% off of our rent, and also confirmation that if we need to access the office at any time, that we'll be able to coordinate a meeting time with a member of the building team to let us in.
Thanks for sending additional resources. These are great. We'll add them in.
And last, I think, would love advice outreach from Office of Arts and Special Projects on protocol for reaching out to schools, principals, then teachers is what we've been doing, but sometimes it's crickets. I think that's something we're able to share. Great. And then what about the projects at schools that were set to start at the end of March through June?
Again, we're going to keep advocating for those projects as well, if you had POs for them already.
It looks like we have about 1 minute left. Any parting words, Jen and Shilpa?
No, we'd just love to know if folks are finding this helpful and would they like to keep offering that. Can I get a thumbs up if it's something that you think we should keep doing?
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Just scrolling through, it's really great to see everybody's faces.
It's so great to feel this community.
You're all amazing and you're doing incredible work. And I know it's been really, really difficult and challenging. And just know that you're not alone. We are all in it together. We've got your back, and we're going to keep advocating on all these different levels for all of our colleagues, administrators, teaching artists, staff, and of course our students and our great, amazing community that we serve. So we will keep it up, and please keep up your positive energy.